welcome, and it's Justice for All, and Merry Christmas to you out there. You're probably driving around and picking up some Christmas gifts, last-minute shopping. Actually, last minute, it used to be last minute was like the day before. Now it's, now we are on the air. So, no, keep it up, higher. Can't hear it. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, this is a little strange. We're having some technical difficulties here, so I'm having some problems. Listen, we are here. I'm George Yates. This is Justice for All, and this is our Christmas show, right? Because coming up on Thursday, we will be here for Christmas of 2014, and then next week we're going to do our end of the year show, where we're going to kind of do a recap of all the shows we've had. Today it's I don't think you can pick up the news or go on the news without knowing about this Sony hacking thing. It's kind of the story of the day. And President Obama this morning upset that the Sony studio pulled this film, The Interview. Heard the movie was probably kind of sophomoric and silly, but now we're not going to get to see it. Maybe it's all just a publicity stunt, right? Actually, it's not. It's the real thing. And 3 weeks ago, for those of you that have not really been paying attention to this story, but 3 weeks ago, Sony Pictures Entertainment was the victim of a massive cyber attack by this outlaw group called the Guardians of Peace. And they somehow got into Sony's security and stole, thousands of these internal documents and emails. And then they released them. And, the press, always wanting to, make money and get a story, began to print these stories in public, even though it was stolen. It was kind of a travesty that I realize we have a free press, but when you realize that stuff is stolen, it's hacked, it's private internal data, and somebody hacks it, releases it, and then someone just publishes it to the world, it's kind of irresponsible. And I see that Sony has even hired the great super lawyer David Bowies to represent them in this cyber attack and the leaks that are the result of it. I think that when you get into the details of these leaked emails, which might not mean that much to those of us who are not in the entertainment business, but for people that really are in the know, apparently these emails are very sensitive, very damaging. They reveal information that Sony certainly did not want to have made known. So that's going to be a separate legal issue going forward. And then we have the fact that this the threats from North Korea. Apparently, we found out that it's a hacking group from North Korea, and then there was threats from North Korea that people went to this movie, that there would be perhaps danger. So as a result, the movie's been pulled. So it's kind of the story of the day, and so it's one we're going to talk about today in the various aspects of this story and how it's going to kind of play out going forward. We have with us today, our guest is Hanna Hasl-Kelchner. She's an attorney from North Carolina and is an expert in she's a business lawyer and knows a lot about this kind of issue, emails, hackers, how businesses protect themselves, internal security and emails, this kind of thing. And she's with us today. How are you doing, Ms. Hasl-Kelchner?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you.
I know you've been on MSNBC and a lot of other shows. This is kind of your area of expertise. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you've gotten into this particular area of law?
Well, I've taken an untraditional route as far as a lawyer. I did the law firm thing and spent most of my time as an in-house lawyer, so I can imagine what the Sony lawyers are going through right now in terms of pulling out their hair. But unlike a lot of other lawyers, I have a business background. I have an MBA. I've run a business. And so consulting with clients and helping them make better decisions and more informed decisions is really my sweet spot, because all too often people don't know what they don't know. So raising awareness, improving legal literacy, and helping to promote informed decision-making, and to make the legal aspects of business just more business-friendly. That's where I come in, and I do that in a number of ways. So it's really good to be here with you and to talk about the Sony situation, because it's really serious.
Well, tell me about it. What makes this hack? I mean, we know hackers get into things all the time. It's not the first time we've heard it. Somebody hacked into the Target database the other day. We've heard about hacks into credit card information, and those kinds of things are serious. People are upset about it. We move on from it. This one, we got the president talking about it, for God's sake. So it's a little different than some of these other hacks. In your opinion, what's different about this hack?
The sheer volume, the size of it. And it touches on a number of hot buttons, but the breadth of the information. It's not just credit card information; it's everything. They didn't discriminate. They got everything, and they've released bits and pieces in the most sensitive ways. Embarrassing emails, confidential information. Some of the most, I think, vicious is the release of personal identifiable information, employees' Social Security numbers, medical data. It goes on. And I'm sure we haven't seen the last of it, that there's more. And so the full magnitude of the damage that's being done is going to take some time to really manifest itself.
Well, Aaron Sorkin wrote an article the other day called "The Sony Hack and the Yellow Press," and it was very critical of the news media themselves, these other sources that reproduce this information and disseminate it. What do you think of that?
Well, that's a two-edged sword. On the other hand, it's news. I appreciate the point of view that he has, but maybe some of his emails were part of that. So I understand where people think that it's private. I think even Amy Pascal, the chairman of Sony, said, "Well, these are private communications." As a lawyer, you have to chuckle a little inside, because if you do litigation or been involved with litigation, you know that business records are not private. They will be disclosed. They can become public. And yes, there are protective orders that can be put in place to try and limit who can have access to it. But ultimately, it's not just between you and the person you're communicating and your screen. Especially an email is more like a postcard. It can be read by anyone along the way. And so it's really naive to think that your emails are private. Now, they shouldn't be hacked. That's not an excuse or justifies hacking and the disclosure. By the same token, we're talking about emails and sexy type of information about celebrities. And people they eat that stuff up, unfortunately. That doesn't make it right, but you could understand how it happened.
So you think it's okay that if somebody hacks into somebody's private emails, and I understand, people these days, I do think, believe that their emails are private. I think that what's happened, we all know now the NSA is spying on us and reading everything, but I think that most of us have an expectation in privacy. We understand that an email might be, let's say, discoverable in litigation. Somebody might, if they're suing us, and we can show that it's relevant, that it can be produced. But I think that don't we have a right to feel that our emails are private, and that if somebody hacks in, that the press is not just going to release it to the public?
Well, I think you got three issues there. One is the expectation and whether that's reasonably based. And sure, we all like to think that, well, this is my phone. This is my computer. It's not anybody else's business. And even in your work email, your business email, you think it's just between you and the person you're corresponding with. The reality doesn't support that. The facts don't support that. There are some laws in place that help provide some protection. The Stored Communications Act is one example, and it's a criminal statute, but it has civil penalties, that make it illegal for someone who does not have authorized approval to access somebody's emails. All right, so you got a cause of action. What does that get you? In reality, if somebody gets in, they get in. Then you got the third issue about the press. Should they have exercised some additional judgment or higher standard of ethics or journalism to say, well, wait a minute, this isn't right? That's a tough question, and that is going to depend on the culture of each individual news outlet as to, how far they push the envelope of good taste. So.
Well, I think that now what is, I see that this week David Bowie's was hired here on some, I guess it was sometime this last couple of days. Sony Pictures hired him to stop news publications from using these stolen documents. Do you know what he's been doing and whether or not he's going to be successful in stopping any further leaks of this information?
I'm not familiar with what he's doing. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to. I'm not sure what legal avenues he's going to pursue, whether they're going to be soft or hard tactics. But he's a very talented lawyer, and so I'm sure Sony is going to be well represented.
Right.
And I wish him well because there's more data out there than they even realize. And so who has it, and how do you stop them from using it in a malicious way? That's the challenge. That's the challenge.
So do you agree with their decision to not play the movie, to not run the movie during the scheduled release?
I respect their decision. I think it's regrettable that they were pushed in the corner to do that. But think about it. They have distribution agreements with these Cineplexes, and if they're getting squirrely because of threats, and the last one, or there was one last week that talked about, remember 911, and so, now we're talking more than just information being released and people being embarrassed and humiliated and possibly having their identity stolen. We're talking about collateral damage of people that have nothing to do with Sony outside of wanting to be entertained on a traditional holiday event for a lot of families, myself included. It used to be, something we did, after Christmas dinner. And now they may be afraid to go. And so do they force these movie theaters to abide by their distribution agreements? Or do they say, well, you know what, we're going to leave it up to you? Because if they required them to live up to their contract and the bad thing happens, guess who's going to get sued?
Well,
Everybody.
We have a society now that just seems so amenable to fear. We fear-monger so often, and I think that what happened here was the possibility that there could be any kind of thing anywhere was enough to make them want to pull the movie. We don't want to have people freaked out and afraid to go to the little Cineplex and stop the shoppers from coming to the mall and all of that. So they'll probably change it around and release it after Christmas. In January sometime when all the retailers at the malls aren't worried about somebody, stopping the flow of shoppers to the mall. I mean, the movie's going to come out, I would bet, but it's just going to be delayed a week or two until after the Christmas season. That's my prediction. Because I don't think
I think you're right.
Yeah. So, well, listen, how in the larger picture, since you're a business lawyer that advises, how does this hack relate to the larger business picture as, let's say, a lawyer like me, for instance, I run a small firm. I send emails back and forth. I also send them from my phone. Are you telling me that I have no legitimate expectation of privacy in my emails, and at any minute they could be hacked and used and published and that sort of thing, and I couldn't do anything about it?
I don't know that there's nothing you could do about it. I think security depends on each business's particular setup, in terms of the encryption that they use, in terms of the service provider that they use, and how proficient those service providers are in providing the security that you need.
So
I've heard people.
So
yeah.
What did these people do? I mean, I would guess that Sony's got some pretty good encryption techniques. How did they hack in to this system? Or do you know technologically what they did? Is there any information out there as to how they got in? And doesn't that mean that every business, I guess a two-part question, and doesn't that mean that every business going forward is having to get a little more sophisticated in protecting their sensitive information?
I would encourage businesses to be more sensitive about their information and how it's handled and not be casual about it, because we take a lot of things for granted. And it's easy because, people are so pressed for time. So it's natural to want to, especially these electronic conveniences, they make it easier to do more with less. And I think people do need to be more cautious, especially businesses. And I'm not familiar with I'm not sure it's been released, specifically how the hackers infiltrated Sony's network. But people that are skilled can do all kinds of things. And unfortunately, a lot of companies, especially small and mid-sized companies, make it easier than ever before. It's kind of like locking the front door and throwing the windows open. And I'll give you an example. These bring your own device policies, where people don't want to have a separate laptop for business and personal, or a separate tablet for business and personal, or cell phone, so they combine it. So now there's personal and business data combined on one device. And all too often, they're downloading all kinds of apps because, oh, this is cool. You know, I can schedule this and do that and whatnot. And new apps in particular have security holes. So now this is on your electronic device, and that could be throwing open a window to hackers. So, you know, I would encourage people to rethink and especially anticipate how the existing structure of a bring-your-own-device policy is working or how it could expose their business to potential hackers. That's not to say don't use a bring-your-own-device policy, but just see where there are gaps and how you might be able to fill them technologically. Because even with a company-issued and enterprise-issued device, there was a study done not that long ago that talked about millennials in particularly and how even they will download personal apps onto company-owned equipment. You know, tablets, it was like 73% of them did it. Smartphones, 62%. Laptops, 45%. I mean, that's a lot of exposure. So you know, there are those types of things. It's like walking around with your pants around your knees. You know, eventually you'll trip.
Yeah.
Eventually, it's just a matter of time. You know, maybe a disgruntled employee. I mean, how many people are really expect North Korea to have them in the crosshairs? You know, it's not that likely. I mean, how many people issue something like that, like an interview movie that could raise the ire of a regime? But you might have a former employee. You may have an upset customer. You might have an upset supplier. There could be all kinds of reasons why somebody wants to get even, and because they have limited communication capacity, choose to do it this way. It's sad, but it's true. So if you're serious about protecting your communications and your information and your business, then I think it's just a prudent thing to do. And it doesn't mean you have to go into this massive overwhelm. I think you can break it down.
If you just joined us, this is George Yates with Justice for All, and we're here with Hanna Hasl-Kelchner, and she's a business attorney. Are you in Chapel Hill? Is that where are you in North Carolina?
I am. I'm in Chapel Hill, beautiful Chapel Hill.
Yes, great. Carolina girl, huh? Well, listen.
Actually, yeah.
I went to Wake Forest, so, I always root against the Heels. Sorry. But,
well, that's okay. I do, too, because I'm a Dookie.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, listen, so you're saying then that what can create problems with security is a lot of times an app that can get loaded onto a business platform, and then a hacker can kind of enter onto the platform through that app. Is that what you're saying? It's actually got a lot less security than maybe the system would have, and so it actually breaches the security of the system.
Exactly, and if
what are the rest
got 100 employees.
Do we are we supposed to? Let's say we're a small or medium-sized business. We don't have an IT person on hand that does this sort of thing. What do? Do you call in a security expert to kind of look at your system and tighten it up? What's the solution to it? The quick down and dirty solution to that? For those of us that say, "Hey, we want to be private. We don't want anybody reading our stuff." What do you do?
I think the first instance, I think you need to decide how important your data is.
We'll assume it's important.
Okay, if it's important.
Because I know that right now, as an attorney, I think that we see these things a lot now. In fact, there's new requirements for law firms, and I'm sure there's not that many lawyers out there listening to this show, so they're not necessarily law firms. But I do know that in the law business, because there are emails are confidential. I mean, we certainly are expecting privacy between lawyers and their clients. It's confidentiality. I'm careful sometimes about talking with a client over the cell phone about a sensitive matter. I'm not assuming somebody's listening in on my cell phone conversation, but I do know that cell phone conversations, you do not have an expectation of privacy in them. Anybody can listen in because it's radio telephone, but yet if you're on a landline and the other person you're talking to is on a landline, you are at least protected by the wiretap rules. Whereas with emails, as you say, if they are open to hacks, then they could be exposed. So what does someone do? And I know lawyers going forward are going to be required to go to seminars and learn about security and how they can keep their data secure since they're trying to secure confidential information. What does your average business do, though, if they want to have an expectation of privacy? Who do they call? I mean, do you have a recommendation? Do you go online and ask, Google, internet security, email security person, and somebody shows up and says, I can do this for you. How's it done?
Certainly getting a security consultant would be a good first step if somebody wants their overall system evaluated.
So there are security consultants out there that hold them and that will help you do this.
Yes, absolutely. And some of them might even be former hackers. If nothing else, they know where the weaknesses are because they've infiltrated before. It's like store security, former people that had been doing breaking and entering. They know how to get around security systems. So they would certainly be folks to advise someone.
Mm-hmm.
But if a business is to the point where it's like, well, I just can't afford it, they're afraid of what a consultant like that might cost. Another way to slice it is to say, well, let's look at the business records that you have. The ones that are most critical and most sensitive are things like personally identifiable information, social security numbers, credit card information, bank information, if you have that from your clients or your vendors. And at least isolate that and make sure that's secure, because that is the door to identity theft, which you have to report it. Different states have different reporting requirements. Someone told me recently, North Carolina, besides giving notice to everybody, you have to give public notice. And that could be a really terrifying thing for a small business to have to put something in the newspaper to say, I had a data breach and my little dress shop on Main Street, all my credit card information is out there. Are people going to be that eager to go back there? Now they've been inconvenienced, like with the Home Depot hack over the summer. They had to get new credit cards, new PIN numbers, and they might have really liked their PIN number because they could remember it, but now they got to start over. And it's just a huge inconvenience, and they're going to go someplace where they feel they can trust the retailer. They can trust the business.
Well, certainly, so I think the fact that this is happening right now is going to make it a lot easier for these other breaches, at least if it happens to the little guy on the corner selling flowers. They're going to say, well, it happened to Sony. It happened to these big players too. So it can happen to anybody. But how do you, from an IT standpoint, take these? There must be a lockbox or something. And I think maybe that would be a good topic for a show. We could get somebody on here that actually does that technologically, how they actually can go on and secure somebody's site. Are you familiar with what they actually do when the security consultant comes in to secure the site?
I think it depends on the company and what components of their network or their website they're trying to secure. But different consultants have different areas of expertise. So just like everything else, and you're looking for a computer doctor, you're looking for a cyber doctor that understands the landscape and someone that can help you fine-tune your system for the most critical data. And personally identifiable for sure, that has to be locked up really good. And if you have an international business, that's even more important because some of the privacy standards for that type of information internationally are tighter than they are in the United States. So, for example, you keep your information on the cloud, it really pays to pull check what that cloud service provider is providing in terms of security, that it really meets the requirements of all the jurisdictions for which you have data obligations. So it can get complicated. But the thing is, this is a necessary thing for business. It's a good practice. And now that hacking, especially the Sony thing, you're right. If it happens to Sony, it can happen to anyone. How do you protect yourself?
We're here with Hanna Hasl-Kelchner. We're going to take a little short break here. She's an expert in this security situation that's involving Sony and the hacking situation. Can you stay with us? After our break, you want to come back and we'll ask you a few more questions. All right?
Sure.
Okay, great. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We'll be right back.
The place people look to for their holiday light needs is Inarray Outdoor Lights. Let the professionals at Inarray decorate the exterior of your home and business without you lifting a hand. Get $100 off a $1,000 purchase. Call 355-5276 and log on to Inarray.com. Light up your home or business this holiday season with Inarray. Call 355-5276 today.
Hello, this is Big Bear inviting you to visit myself and Grandma Bear at Little Bear's Consignment Boutique, where you'll find the best new and gently used children's brand name clothing and equipment. Clothing from newborn to teens, dresses, suits, shoes, strollers, bassinets, toys, and anything else you need. Little Bear's is your stop. We even carry maternity clothes. Check us out on Facebook or stop in 200 North Battlefield Boulevard in the Harbor Watch Shops of Chesapeake near the locks. Little Bear's Consignment Boutique, where you're always greeted with a smile.
The place for authentic Indian food is the India Palace. They feature authentic Indian cuisine, have a party hall, and do catering and banquets. Open daily for lunch and dinner, they feature an excellent lunch buffet at their 2 establishments. Visit the 2 locations, 1437 Sam's Drive in Chesapeake off Battlefield and 5600 Virginia Beach Boulevard. Online, IndiaPalaceVB.com. On Facebook, look for India Palace Virginia Beach and India Palace Bar and Grill. Call 410-1183 for the India Palace.
Well, okay, we're back with Justice for All. I'm George Yates, and we're here with Hanna Hasl-Kelchner. She's an attorney from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we've been talking about this Sony hacking situation. You've been interviewed on several other radio and television programs, I guess, about this particular issue. What are some other concerns that other folks and interviewers have had with this kind of issue with this Sony thing? What are the ramifications of it going forward, in your opinion?
Well, there are multiple ramifications because, so many people have been touched by this, certainly the company and the employees and former employees, but business relationships. I think something that people are starting to talk about is, what does this mean to the right to free speech? I mean, this really is the massive size of this attack is really a form of cyber terrorism because they didn't like the movie. Somebody didn't like the movie, so they pulled out all the stops in order to keep it from being distributed, at least in the short term. Now, Sony may find other ways once they have an idea of what the magnitude and they're in crisis mode right now. And they're still sorting this out. They're like in the middle of a blizzard. And the full ramifications are yet to be determined. And they probably will release it. When is the question? How is the question? I've heard people say, well, they should just put it on the Internet so everybody sees it, fight the hackers, tit for tat, and just put it out there the way they put these emails out there. Well, there is a financial component to consider. But beyond that, considering that there are hackers with really malicious intent, I know some folks, we were just talking about this at lunch yesterday, and they said, well, I'd love to see the movie, but I'd be concerned about going to a website and downloading it or even watching it on the website that I'm going to pick up some kind of malware on my computer. So that's a fair concern. And those are things that Sony's going to need to think through, and I'm sure they will. They have some talented people, and they've got great resources that they can tap. So that will eventually happen. But the chilling effect that this can have, suppose somebody else. The beauty of our system here is we have the right to free speech, which means Sony could make a movie like that and distribute it without fear of repercussion from the U.S. government. Now, that's what makes our country great. But here, Sony's gotten repercussions from a foreign government on our own soil. And that
and
is dangerous.
Right, it really is. And I think that, first of all, of course they shouldn't have to produce it for free. We're a capitalist country. We believe in the rights of somebody to make a profit. They made this, it's their creative product. They've got the right to make a living off of it. So it's a violation of their constitutional rights if we don't allow them. And I think the government has a duty to let them release this movie. I think that's one reason why Obama was a bit upset about it, because I think that it's almost like the situation where you take a hostage and you pay them ransom. I know these European countries pay money for hostages, but we don't ordinarily, and sometimes that causes problems. But it's bowing into the terrorism, and it's cyber terrorism. And if we allow this to happen, what's next? That's the thing. Because if somebody's going to throw it in the towel and not release something, well, then it's just open. It's going to be a snowball effect. I think at a minimum, we're going to need to step in, allow Sony to release the movie, and make sure that there's a protection for the people that want to go see it. Where do you see that going forward? Don't you see a slippery slope that if we allow this to happen, that we could just see this as because the way I look at it, we've seen this, the Taliban and some of these other terrorist groups for the longest time, this ISIL, and they've been making money by taking hostages and then selling the hostages to the governments. That's how they've been making money. If they'd stopped paying the money for the hostages, they wouldn't be taking hostages. So I see that as a problem going forward, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I think you're dead on point there. What complicates the Sony situation a little bit as compared to the hostages is that there could be a whole lot more collateral effect. Had they said, well, we're going forward with that December 25th release, suppose something did happen at a Cineplex, or at multiple Cineplexes around the country. That would just put tremendous fear in people, and rightfully so. Nobody expects to get blown up or shot down going to the movies. It's supposed to be fun. If there's a shoot-'em-up scene, it's on the screen, not in the lobby. And so there's that concern. There's other studios that are having major releases. I mean, the December 25th is a big day for movies. So if people are afraid to go to the movies, those studios would have a cause of action against Sony. Anybody who gets injured, the Cineplexes, because of lost revenue, because now nobody's coming. There's a big domino effect in terms of the economic impact of standing ground at this point in time without having that security net in place to be able to, I don't want to say guarantee, but to be reasonably certain that people could safely enjoy the movie. And that's where this all happened too fast.
Yeah, but doesn't that just open the door for any kind of a threat? What's to stop some other government or some other group, like what was the name of this group? The Guardians of Peace. I mean, what's to stop some other group from saying that doesn't like the content of another movie? There's all kinds of movies out there that rattle other groups' cages. I mean, the fact of it is that we've got Hollywood puts out all kinds of movies that are controversial, not quite as controversial as this one. I mean, actually killing a head of state, but we have other movies that bother people. Well, what's to stop some other group from just making a threat, and now we say, well, now we're going to stop? I think we've set a dangerous precedent. I do. I mean, I appreciate what you've said, that maybe they should have pulled it because they were going to stop the other movies and so on and so forth. But I think that we should have gone ahead, and they should have gone ahead and run the movie when it was supposed to come out. Say, we're not afraid of this. We're going to go forward with it, and hope and pray there would be no incident, because there probably wouldn't have been. I don't think North Korea can get to us, and I don't think they can. And so I think it's a mistake. I do, because I think that what it's done is it set a precedent for this to happen again in the future. The next studio is liable to do the same thing. When does it end? And I'm upset that they caved on this one.
I agree with you. I'm upset that they caved, but I still respect the decision. And I don't. I mean, in the short term, you're right. I don't think there is anything to stop someone. But figuring out what those stop gaps can be is what we need to do in order to make things safer and more secure, so that people can protect that expression of free speech that we prize so dearly. It comes with a price.
I mean, we do have. I mean, every major metropolitan police department in this country has a sophisticated fire department, with hazmat teams and bomb detectors and all kinds of things like that. So I think that we could have gone ahead and done it. Maybe beefed up a little security. Put some of the bomb people around there, the bomb sniffing dogs or whatever, in the big cities. And gone ahead with it and said, we're not going to be bowed by this kind of cyber terrorism. I think we need to stop it right when it starts, because I think that it's a problem. But anyway, I see what they've done, and as I said, it's apparently a done deal. But if they do not reschedule movie for release and do it soon, I think all it's going to do is open the door to any other kind of threat that's going to make us all live in fear. We cannot live in fear in this country. We've done it for too long. We after 9/11, we passed the Patriot Act, and we've done all these things that now supposedly compromise our privacy because we have to go through the detectors on the airplanes, and it's what's next? Going through metal detectors to go into movie theaters. I guess that's next, right? So it's kind of it's tragic that we're going to end up having to do this. We need to stop it right now, in my opinion. So, but the last interview that you gave was where?
It was actually in St. Louis.
And was that on radio or television station?
That was radio.
Uh-oh.
It was radio.
What's the name of that show?
Actually, it was called The K Factor, and I talked about kindness, and this was definitely, because there is an intersection, but being kind, who are we being kind to, and how's this going to fit? But I agree with you. It needs to be stopped. The question is how to do it in a way that is not as shrill as what their response was, that is proportional, that can be sustained, and a way that we can be proud of. And that's just it. The timing is what, in a crisis situation, is what makes this so difficult. But other businesses, the non-Sonys of the world, have the luxury of being able to anticipate and plan. And to me, that's the silver lining and sort of the gift in all of this, if you want to look at the positive. Because, how are they vulnerable? What do they want to protect the most? They have time to put those kinds of plans in place and do it in a way that can fit their budget and can fit their business goals and objectives and protect their business, and their livelihoods, the livelihoods of their employees and their families, which is why we do all this to begin with. So there is an upside, and my heart goes out to Sony because it's terrible. It's terrible on so many levels. Everybody's affected by it. Their employees, certainly their senior leadership. For some folks, the disclosure of those emails certainly damages their leadership brand, and depending on the financial fallout, shareholders may have a concern. So it just on multiple levels. That's what makes this so interesting, and I'm sure business students going forward will be dissecting this case in a lot of ways.
Well, at least I'm glad I got to find out that some people think that Angelina Jolie is a brat.
Yeah, and that's a damaged relationship right there, because did you see there was a great picture of Amy Pascal running into Angelina at some, was a power luncheon or a power breakfast, and boy, if looks could kill. I mean, she made Maleficent look like Mother Teresa in comparison. I mean, wow, it was icy. It was so chilly.
Yeah, I mean, the Christmas parties in Hollywood now must just be really awesome. I mean, they got to be a lot of fun. Every party has got so much to talk about. I mean, otherwise it was probably just be all this kind of BS stuff, right? But now it's like, oh man, there's juicy gossip, constant. I mean, there's just so much to talk about. And imagine, when some of these people are invited to the same party, and look at who's over there said that about me, and so it's gonna really be. I mean, it sounds like a lot of fun, really, when you get right down to it.
It's fun if you're on the outside, but if it's one of those is your email, it might not be so much fun. Which actually that is really a great point, because besides the whole security component of this, another way, and a really simple way, people can protect their email is not to put content in there that can be bullets to be used against them.
But people don't think about that. When people write emails, one of the most remarkable things to me is that people will write emails even now that are basically admitting criminal acts, and then later on it turns out that they get subpoenaed, and they're prosecuted and they're convicted based upon their own email. They'll do it constantly. So I realize what at the top of the show you had said, well, emails are not protected. Everybody knows that. Well, no, they do not know that. Most people think their emails are private and cannot be gotten into, and it's not true at all.
Right. Or things they put on Facebook. That's another one. I know some people think that's private. It's like, really?
Well,
you talk to Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah, Facebook now, that's like putting a billboard out on the highway. I think that's pretty public. So, I wonder I wonder if this ultimately will be a net gain for the studio. I mean, a lot of people who might not ordinarily want to go see this movie might want to go see it. That now just because of all the hoopla about it, maybe in the long run they'll end up making some money off of it. Or maybe they'll just have to go direct to DVD with it if they can't, put it out in the theaters because people are afraid to see it that way. Who has been suggesting that it be released for free, like on the internet? Who suggested that?
And I saw it in some article somewhere. I forget what outlet it was on, but some people suggest that. Yeah, I thought that was pretty brazen. I mean, how convenient. But they're running a business. They have numbers, and it's cost them something like $80 million, which of course is a number we now know thanks to the emails. But it's
an $80 million movie, and people there to say, why don't you just go ahead and release it on the internet, eat the $80 million.
Right, or just Redbox it. I mean, it's. They have to figure this out in a way that makes business sense. That's just that there's more than the usual parameters to making the decision. Before they had their distribution channels. Now those distribution channels have wavered. And, maybe they'll man up and put their big boy pants on and say, no, we're not going to do this and we're going to stand behind Sony. Maybe they won't.
What's going to happen? What's going to happen going forward? We know that these, what's it called, the Guardians of Peace. Now, are they associated with the North? I mean, we know the North Korean government is the most repressive regime in the entire world. We just opened up relations with Cuba the other day, but nobody would ever suggest that Cuba is repressive as North Korea. Who are the Guardians of Peace anyway? And I guess the FBI is saying that we know that this is a North Korean project. Do you suppose that it must be government sponsored, the Guardians of Peace, wouldn't you say?
Somehow, that they certainly make it sound that way, that they're central in helping to encourage this attack. And actually, North Korea was making noises about this movie going back to June, so it's no surprise that they're not happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a bunch of 17-year-old North Korean kids laying around in their pajamas on their PCs hacking into Sony. This is a government. This has got to be a government effort, right? So the Guardians of Peace, that's just a little BS group, right? From the North Korean government, isn't it?
I don't know enough about the Guardians of Peace. Whoever was behind this, it was probably more than one person. It was a sophisticated effort. It was planned, and so far they've gotten away with it. I mean, I had one person say, well, does this mean they're above the law? And my answer to that is no. They just think they are. They're behaving like it, and the wheels of justice turn slow, as you know, but they turn, and it's going to take some time. And they'll find them.
What is the law? This is a show about the law a lot of the time, justice for all and all of that. I'm a lawyer. You're a lawyer. But what is the law? I mean, I would guess, okay, if I'm, hack into your computer and I steal your identity and use it, that's a credit card crime or an identity theft crime. We have federal laws. But what is, when you're hacking into somebody's computer just to release gossip, what's the law? Do you know? Is it a violation of international law? Is it a violation of federal law? What's the violation here? Just to hack into somebody's private emails and then say we've got them and then just send them out to all the news outlets and hope they print them?
In the United States, we have the Stored Communications Act, and that prohibits the unauthorized access to someone else's computer. If you don't have their approval to use their password, you don't have authorization. So it's a criminal statute with civil penalties. Now, going forward, maybe those civil penalties become criminal. Maybe there'll be a new laws enacted, which wouldn't surprise me. When we had the financial meltdown and we had all of the funny money accounting back in the early 2000s with Enron and WorldCom, well, we suddenly had Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Now, I know a lot of people may be rolling their eyes and moaning and groaning. It might have been an overreaction, but the law is always playing catch-up with technology. And so when people are irresponsible, then somebody says, well, there ought to be a law. It's got to be stopped. We need a rule of law. We need We need a particular way that we can say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. You got to draw a line. And unfortunately, that's how our society works. And people complain about the law all the time. That's fine. But without it, we'd have even more chaos and anarchy and more bad behavior because there would be no accountability.
So what's the name of this law that's been violated? What's it called?
Well, the Stored Communications Act for sure. But, it's like, okay, so it's been violated. Good. Go find them and sue them and, bring them into court.
Right.
If they're in a foreign jurisdiction, you're going to have some issues. And getting them to pay up something, what if they have no resources? So, sometimes, the system just doesn't provide enough compensation to make a company whole. And, I'm sure Congress will have hearings and this, that, and the other as to what could be done or should be done. And, they'll make some hay out of it. But that's just it, the fallout.
When you've got a country like North Korea that we don't really have any relations with, we don't do any trade with them. I don't think that we do anything with North Korea. So it's not like some other country. Let's say this kind of a hack came from some country that we have relations with. We would be able to have some kind of sanctions back or some kind of way to go back against them, but I'm not sure what do you suppose Obama's remedies are if he wants to get a little payback to North Korea? What do you suppose his options are?
There might be some sanctions. There may be some, something they could do in front of the UN. It's interesting. I saw a headline yesterday that apparently North Korea wants to be part of a joint team to review the hacking, which I find amusing. Huh. Yeah, exactly. There could be limited diplomatic sanctions or opportunities, which is why I find it kind of amusing that today's headline talked about how, Obama's kind of pushed it back on Sony. You shouldn't have caved to them. Well, that's great. You would not be, the White House isn't the one to be the one that gets sued while they're waving the flag and the Constitution. Sony has a lot of exposure at this moment in time. They need to figure out how to plug some of those holes and to go forward with their business model, which is fine. But sure, because otherwise it puts more pressure on the government. Because for this kind of a massive hacking, and apparently they have been in touch with the White House, which is one thing back and forth. But for the degree of sophistication that's involved, that's not your typical IT department. You need bigger guns and resources that only the government can help bring to bear.
Oh, yeah. This was an inside job by the North Korean government. They've got nuclear weapons. They've got some pretty sophisticated, intelligent folks there in that government working for Kim Jong or whatever his name is. and so they're ready, and they did it. And I like I said earlier, I think that Obama is going to have to look at this, and I think the whole government, our government's going to have to look at this as an attack on our country, our whole way of life, our First Amendment and everything else, our right to free speech and creative license to produce a product that people are going to look at and laugh at or whatever they want to do. And I think that going forward, it's going to be a very chilling effect on the creative process if anybody does something controversial and they're worried about being cyber attacked or a victim of some kind of terrorism, don't you think?
Yes, and hopefully that window of time is going to be short because Sony will get on top of the game and we'll get some closure and resolution to this, which is why I do wish them Godspeed in order to get this resolved.
Right.
It's a mess. It's complex. It's a mess. There's so many ramifications, not just for their business and their employees, but for the country. And the thing is, private corporations are not in the business of public policy. That's not typically their area.
But it is one of those things where I think the government does definitely have to play a role in this going forward.
Yes.
In order certainly to protect the public and to protect the right of a creative artist like Sony to produce a product like this that might have controversy and create issues for itself going forward. Well, listen, Hanna Hasl-Kelchner, it's been great talking to you this last hour. It was kind of spur of the moment that we got you on the show for this, so it was had a lot of fun. Do you have anything you want to say about this issue? We've got just a couple of minutes. Is there something we haven't touched on or a thought you've had about this particular issue that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I would just encourage business owners, executives, managers, and entrepreneurs to re-examine their own digital security, but also how they use email, and think twice about the convenience when perhaps a face-to-face conversation or a phone conversation over a secure line might be the better choice. You know, we reach for these electronic gadgets as a form of convenience, and texting is just a whole other can of worms because it's so terse and easily misunderstood that it helps create conflict. And that's the last thing you want. You want to be able to facilitate your business so that things run smoothly and not throw speed bumps in the way.
I know. If you're gonna call Angelina Jolie a brat, at least do it on the telephone and do not do it over an email. I think you're probably right about that.
Yeah, what business purpose does it serve? I mean, it's venting, and I understand that people get angry. I do too, and I'm sure you do at times. But there's a time and a place to do that. And in an email that is a permanent business record,
yep.
Not so smart. Not so smart.
People are not people, but you know what? We all know, and it's not going to change. People are just not very smart. Well, listen, thank you so much for being with us, and you have a great day, and we'll be right back with the next. We're going to come right back, and we'll be back on the Justice for All show with George Yates. This is Hanna Hasl-Kelchner. Thanks so much for being with us, Hanna.
Thank you.
All right, great. Have a great day. Okay, we're going to be right back. We're going to just take a quick minute break, and we'll be right back.
The place people look to for their holiday light needs is Inter-Ray Outdoor Lights. Let the professionals at Inter-Ray decorate the exterior of your home and business without you lifting a hand. Get $100 off a $1,000 purchase. Call 355-5276 and log on to interray.com. Light up your home or business this holiday season with Inter-Ray. Call 355-5276 today.
Hello, this is Big Bear inviting you to visit myself and Grandma Bear at Little Bear's Consignment Boutique, where you'll find the best new and gently used children's brand name clothing and equipment. Clothing from newborn to teens. Dresses, suits, shoes, strollers, bassinets, toys, and anything else you need. Little Bear's is your stop. We even carry maternity clothes. Check us out on Facebook or stop in 200 North Battlefield Boulevard in the Harbor Watch Shops of Chesapeake near the locks. Little Bear's Consignment Boutique, where you're always greeted with a smile.
The place for authentic Indian food is the India Palace. They feature authentic Indian cuisine, have a party hall, and do catering and banquets. Open daily for lunch and dinner, they feature an excellent lunch buffet at their 2 establishments. Visit the 2 locations, 1437 Sam's Drive in Chesapeake off Battlefield and 5600 Virginia Beach Boulevard. Online, IndiaPalaceVB.com. On Facebook, look for India Palace Virginia Beach and India Palace Bar and Grill. Call 410-1183 for the India Palace.